Financial Argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Welcome to Prepare the Way. I am Daniel Holdings, and we have a really important show for you this evening. You know, I've covered the gambit, and we've had some awesome guests. But one of the things that I have lacked as far as content goes for the show is a guy that I can talk to about the economy. And because I came from that realm, I can talk pretty well with regard to the specifics of it, but being able to dialogue with somebody on air in a way that people can understand is really important, because I think all these things are interconnected. I have an expert that will help you to understand where we are at in America's history at the very least, because as you've heard me say for many, many months now, the United States economy is about to be walloped. And as a consequence, you and I need to be prepared for what is coming. Well, there is no one better to explain not only what is coming, but how to deal with it and what to expect than my next guest. POLNY is an experienced cycles analyst and specializes in gold and silver and the world stock markets. He successfully timed the 2011 1900 gold cap and $49 silver cycle top, and also pointed out that China was going to hit the top of their stock market in 2015. He has an extensive list of very reputable clients and has been a presenter or speaker at various conference and trade shows, including the New York Metals and Minerals Investment Conference, Seattle's Washington Cambridge House Silver Summit, London's Mines and Money, chairing and speaking in 2014, and the list goes on and on. So it's my great pleasure to welcome POLNY. Welcome to Prepare the Way.
Daniel, thank you for reaching out to me. I really look forward to speaking with you today.
We are very excited to have you on because of your perspective. And I was talking with you a little bit off the air about your unique perspective to how you see the gold and silver markets and the financial markets in general, and how you actually time these markets according to the biblical calendar. And for me, that's fascinating. So before we get to all of that, though, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, you know, how I got started, that's a long story, long question. But, years ago, I was, for 20 years plus, I was a doctor. And eventually, life changed. You had to end up seeing world events go on. You see 9/11 happen, and you start questioning, is that all there is in life? And, questions start to hit you. Your mind starts to go places. And so you start doing some research and exploration. And next thing you know, I started looking at details in the Bible and reading things. And, you start to become what's called awake. And so that's kind of how it all began. And then I try to figure out, how the markets relate to the Bible. Is there a correlation? If there is, why hasn't anybody figured it out yet? How does it work? Is it possible to understand how the two correlate? And relative to the stock market, gold, and and then timing within within Revelations, you have the Daniel's timeline. So I try to put it all together, and it was a long journey. And so years later, we end up after 10 plus years, you end up discovering some interesting things, and doing so, was able to prove that it is possible to forecast the future just by some of the successful calculations I've done and some of the calls I've had. When we make forecasts, some of the forecasts, or a lot of the forecasts, they weren't like, hey, the top's coming in. No, this is the day. So most of our forecasts are not done to like within maybe this month the gold's in the top. No, on this day it will top. So we've using the Daniel's timeline. That's how accurate some of these forecasts were. From gold top in 2011, silver top 2011. Stock market top 2015. It was literally using Daniel's time counts, and then for that exact time points, being able to forecast to the day when a top would come in. So anyways, that's a bit of a story of from the start to now.
Audience, I know that normally we don't really go into depth about the financial cycles. You hear us speak about these things in a general sense, but one of the things that I want you to glean from this presentation tonight is that this man is onto something. It's not like he's just talking off the top of his head. Not only has he done the research, but I believe he has found perhaps the cipher or the code, if you will, in order to discern the financial markets in the way that he does, because he actually goes right back, as you just heard him say, to Daniel's timeline. He actually goes right back to the Bible. It's a very exciting time. One of the things that the Christian church never talks about today is the very fact that the biggest prophecies in the Old Testament say that Judah, meaning the house of Judah and Benjamin, or the southern kingdom, will actually get back together with Ephraim, which was the northern kingdom sent to captivity and never returned. The Bible talks about them returning. So there's this whole thing that the Holy Spirit's doing in these days. People waking up independently going, well, wait a minute, that's not what the Bible says. It says this, and this is who we are, and we're going to do this now. We were just talking about the convergence of events in the economic realm, if you talk about wars and rumors of wars, certainly that's burning on the back burner. And you talk about all these other things that they talked about in Matthew 24, and then you see this prophecy coming true as well. It really lends me to believe that we are in those times, the beginning of Jacob's trouble, the beginning of those birth pains.
Here's the thing: is all the math, I did it all. See, the problem is I can't give it to everybody because I don't think I'm supposed to, but I did all the math, and it's crazy. But you can calculate. It says in the Bible no one knows the day or the hour, but that's it. You can figure out the year, the month. That's the crazy part.
So, okay, what month and what year are you talking about?
Well, there's two possibilities of it, but the bottom line is nothing gets started until October.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say that. There are people that we have had on this show.
And they're all going to be wrong. Anybody who doesn't have the schedule, they're all going to be wrong.
If they're going out the Gregorian calendar, this happens, But if you're looking at the Hebrew calendar...
No, but I don't use any of those. I use Daniel's timeline. I calculate it via gold. And see, so if gold has a massive move and a spike, then you ask yourself a question, why? You see, the cycles foretell the direction and where it would go. So if it's going to spike and explode and keep going higher, you have to answer the question is why. So you know there's events going on.
Now that is interesting. So let me give you an example. I haven't asked Bo this question before, but I'm sure he has an answer for me. Do the markets, particularly the gold and the silver markets, correspond to the Shemitah cycle?
Yes, but more importantly, the gold and silver markets correspond to Daniel's timeline. That's the more important part of it. The Shemitah cycle is just a portion of it, because following a Shemitah cycle, you have a Jubilee cycle. So basically, because the Shemitah is every 7 years, but then every 7 times 7 years, which is 49 years, you end up getting a Jubilee year that follows. So like last year, if you go to our webpage or you go to, many of the articles we posted, we wrote last year, I know Jonathan Kahn, very, very smart man, and very religious man, he was writing about how the Shemitah cycle works and how potentially there could be, and again, his words were could be there a crash last September on the Shemitah, but nothing happened. And we were, I think, the only entity in the world, or, a service in the world that was basically saying nothing's going to happen. And we're actually, so we might have a 1 mile day down, then back up, but basically we were not expecting any kind of a crash last September, 2015 on Elul 29, which is the Shemitah day. And we ended up being 100% right. And the reason we knew there was going to be no crash is because of the Jubilee year that follows, which is we're in right now, and that's the 50th year. So 7 times 7 is 49. The economic calamity that the world is expecting occurs in the Jubilee, which is now, not on the Shemitah of the 49th Shemitah. 49th cycle, the 7th cycle of the 49th year of the Shemitah. So and gold and silver, because they're God's money, they basically vibrate, with Daniel's timeline.
Consequently, this is why, audience, you're seeing so many things, and you've heard me talk about this over and over again, the confluence of events, all of these things that are coming together this year is because the year of Jubilee is when debts are returned or forgiven and property goes back. Well, ultimately, the word says that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. He is going to demand those things to come back. Before all that happens, though, there has to be some really big issues coming to the forefront, and I think that's what we're really getting to see. So run us through Daniel's timeline with how you see things playing out, Bo. When you talk about Daniel's timeline, what specifically do you think that the audience needs to take away from that whole discussion about how gold and silver follows Daniel's timeline?
as an example, just this is a very specific example, but and any of your listeners can go verify this information because this is quite important. Because what would the possibilities of this be unless it's true? Okay, so in the year 2008, gold rose and it made a cycle high. I think it was $1,033, I believe. I think it was in March of 20. Again, off the top of my head, but I believe it was March of 2008. Okay, so Daniel's timeline it's a cycle of 1,260 days. If you add another 30, which is a portion of it, so that's 1,290 days. If you add them all up, it basically adds up. What do we got? You got 1,260 times 2. So basically, and then you add it, so 2,520 days. You can add another 30, then 45. Basically, it's 2,550 days. But ultimately, there are segments of the cycle when you study it. There's segments to it. So the key segment of the cycle is a 1,260 segment. So 1,260 days. Okay, so you take a calculator, or actually on the internet, there's a program that you can run and do a day count. So from the cycle high, I believe it was like the second week of March, you add 1,260 days. And because of the Jubilee year, you have to actually incorporate an additional 7. So basically 1,260 plus 7, and you arrive at September, I think, 9th of 2011, which was the exact to-the-day top for gold at $1,923. And so Daniel's timeline foretold the top in gold from 2008 to 2011 to the day. And the reason I knew that would happen, and the reason I called that, because I did it for silver before then. So I sold all my silver at $49 to the day. And why? Because from November of 2007, there was a cycle high in November of 2007. I added 1,267 calendar days, and it arrived at April 29th, 2011. And that was the exact to-the-day top on silver where I sold everything. And then from that point, that was $49 silver, and you can look at the price of silver today. It's like $16.50, 16 and change. The point was we got out of silver on the exact day at the exact top using Daniel's timeline.
All right. So in relative terms to gold, how does that timeline affect gold?
Well, gold, silver leads out of the bottom, but basically gold is a longer term, more stable cycle. So gold bottoms first, and then it tops last. And silver bottoms second, like even happened this year. I don't know if anybody wanted to go look at the chart cycles, but you'll notice that we called the exact to the day bottom on gold, again using Daniel's timeline. This December 3rd, I scheduled an interview on December 3rd. And that was when gold was at $1,045. And we basically said on that day of that specific interview, saying the bottom's in today. And we were 100% right. And then silver, and like I said, gold bottoms first, silver bottoms second. So silver bottomed 2 weeks later on the 15th or the 17th of December 2015 at $13.60. So silver, so basically because they're independent metals, nothing ever, each metal, each entity has its own vibration, has its own cycle, but they all, because they're precious metals, they will follow the Daniel's timeline, and they just have slight variations in their start points and their end points. But aside from that, they basically, both of them, move perfectly with Daniel's cycle.
So I want to ask you about the artificialness of the market itself and how it is subdued by, at least was until the Chinese got in the mix, by the powers that be. However, before I go there, if the audience wants to track some of the charts and stuff that you're referencing, where can they find those at?
I've got a webpage, gold2020forecast.com. On there I have some handful of older videos, or a few videos. We haven't had updated probably in maybe a couple months or so, but there's some videos there. I would highly recommend also, and if you're interested, in getting more details, on that webpage at the very bottom, we offer what's called a gold index, and there you have, like, every week you'll get specific up-to-date updates. On the stock market, there's also a stock market index and updates on that, as well as more very high detailed charting for these gold and silver, but that's like more for traders, called exclusive turn dates. But the bottom, so at the very bottom of the page, details we provide to people who subscribe. But the key is the web page gives a lot of information, and the most recent videos and information we provide are actually on our YouTube channel. We basically do short YouTubes every so often. They're more general, but they're very informative. And on those videos, we don't give specific dates, which we provide within our index, but we give a very, very detailed analysis of what we expect and what direction things are going to go. So just this Saturday, on June 4th, I uploaded a new video. So I definitely would recommend going to the YouTube channel and just go to YouTube, type in my name, or Gold 2020 Forecast, and you'll see the newest YouTube come up, and it's called 0 Hour, and it's 12 minutes, and it's very, very worth paying attention to. But in that channel and on that video we just made, we cover some pretty incredible long-term cycles, and then I get into near the end of it, specifically talking about gold and silver, and I basically answer specifically the question you just asked about, Daniel, about this. I guess you're using the word price manipulation, or are you talking about that just recently?
I was trying to say that without saying that, but yeah.
Yeah. So basically, what I described, I think I'm not sure where it is in the video, but maybe 2/3 the way through the video. Again, it's only a 12-minute video, but definitely you want to have your listeners listen to that. In reference to gold, what I included in that video was a long-term perspective. And so from that chart, if your listeners would take a few minutes to go watch the video, it shows a chart for gold starting in the year 2000. And what it shows is, it's like in a blue zone, but it's called true price discovery. So basically the gold went from $254 in the year 2000, and it rose into the year 2011 to a price of $1,923. And then it formed they basically put the caps on it, and they put the brakes on it, and through the process of price manipulation, using multiple ways of doing it, they caused price of gold to go down, and it went down to what we could describe as a flag formation. So from the year 2011 to 2015, we actually did an interview, again, as mentioned, on the 3rd of December, setting the lows here. But all that did, the whole world was, everybody's been screaming about price, gold's going to go to 1,000 and 700, and basic price manipulation is never going to end. Everybody, I'm sure you've heard people saying that. But basically, nothing ever goes on forever. I think anybody can attest to that. You can't have something go on and on forever. Eventually, all good things come to an end. And so the price manipulation that was being done to gold, Daniel's timeline forecast the low of it coming in December, and now gold's about to explode to incredibly amazing prices. And so the point of the video, if you get a chance to again view it, there's one simple point to it, is that gold is insurance. It is insurance, and it's protection for for the people who own it, for their families. If they buy it for themselves, for their families, they're basically buying protection against the people who against the system that's been printing money to infinity from nothing.
And, we've talked a lot about that, Iance, the idea of a fiat currency and how nothing is backing the currency that they print and says it has value because they want it to have value. But you've heard me use this phrase before, confidence. The only thing that gives that money value is the fact that the government says they will back it. But when the population, Bo, realizes that the emperor has no clothes, then you're going to see the confidence in the dollar go by the wayside. Metals are insurance against the loss of wealth. And, I often quote a friend of mine. He says that if it's not in your hand, then you don't own it. So for those that don't understand the difference between physical gold and silver and paper gold and silver, can you explain what the difference is and where the hazards are?
Yeah, there's multiple examples. I'll give this simple example that people can actually visualize. You buy gold, actually physical gold. You buy gold, you're holding in your hand. You go to the bank and you put your gold in the safety deposit box. Okay, so you actually did the right thing. You bought physical gold. Then you took the gold and you went to your local coin shop. You bought gold. You go, okay, good. I got my gold. I'm going to take it to my bank. I'm going to put it in my safe deposit box. And guess what? That's all great. There's only one big problem with that equation. What don't you have a key to?
You don't have a key to the bank.
Right. Okay. So same example. So let's talk about paper gold. Like there's things ETFs. People buy gold in the paper form. So they buy I think for gold there's a ticker called GLD, or there's other tickers they can buy, and so they think they're buying gold. And yes, those tickers they do move with gold. As so gold goes up, GLD goes up. So these are like stock tickers, and so these are paper assets that go up. And basically the belief is that at one point in the future, should you want, you can take delivery of your physical metal because someone's there, holding it for you in the form of real metal through the trust fund, through the fund of GLD. The problem is I don't know how many people are between you and your gold. So the bank's got at least one door you can't get in. If you got SLV or you've got some paper gold, who knows how many people are between you and your gold? And that's actually if it's even there. Okay, and so that's the problem. And so if anything ever does happen, there's so many entities between you and your paper gold that good luck in getting it. And this is probably the best thing. Then when you start studying how the mechanism works, if you go to a place called the Comex, and they basically post numbers, but basically imagine if you owned a house, Daniel, okay, and you actually own a house. Let's say you have a house, you put it for sale, and you sell your house, right, Daniel? Mm-hmm. If you sold your house to 550 people, is that a good deal for you?
That's a great deal for me.
Right. But now what happens when the people come to move in?
They start fighting over the house. Hopefully I'm long gone.
Right. So for each ounce of gold that's been sold, there are 550 people that believe they own it.
And that's the problem, audience. When we talk about the preservation, we used to use this word a lot in the financial realm, the preservation of wealth. When you look at gold and silver, the actual physical handling of gold and silver, the possession of gold and silver, that's the preservation of your wealth. That's the insurance that Bo was just talking about. Bo, here's another great example. When I was in the financial industry, people used to want to buy mutual funds. And I was never a big mutual fund kind of guy. And I would explain this to them. Okay, you can buy fund XYZ. Let's say that it's a fund that has 10 stocks in it. Well, okay, these 10 stocks are in a basket. You buy the mutual fund. You don't actually own the stocks in the basket. You own the basket. And in the end, you don't own anything. You're not an owner of a company because the fund owns the stocks. You only own the basket. It's kind of the same thing. When you're buying hard assets, you should buy hard assets. You shouldn't be buying paper. And you've heard Mark Call and I talk about this a lot, audience, that gold is way oversold when it comes to paper gold. And, but when we get back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about how the Chinese getting into the gold and silver market is really kind of changing everything and what that will mean, at least in the very near future, with regard to the gold and silver market. So you're listening to Prepare the Way. I'm Daniel Holdings with my special guest, gold and silver expert Bo POLNY of Gold Forecast 2020. We will be right back after the following messages. Stick with us.
We were born for a true revival. We were born for a harvest field. We were born for such a time as this. We were born in a time of trial. We were born on a battlefield. We were born for such a time as this.
Welcome back to Prepare the Way. I'm Daniel Holdings with my special guest, Bo POLNY of Gold Forecast 2020. All right, so Bo, just before the break, I was asking you about the effects of the Chinese getting into the regulating, if you will, with their market in gold and silver, particularly gold. What kind of changes has occurred in the last few months, and what specifically are the Chinese doing these days, and why should it make any difference to us good old Americans?
Well, China for years has been accumulating gold, including Russia. They've been buying and buying and buying gold. They don't report the amount of gold they have, but they keep buying and buying gold. I've got some contacts, some very high-end contacts, and I can tell you flat out from what they're reporting to what they own is completely night and day. If you think about gold, he who has the gold runs the world. In essence, runs the financial system. And so China, by accumulating gold over time, is going to be it's created a very big problem, because depending on how much gold the U.S. truly has or doesn't have, all I know is that China's got a lot. And so at some point, and I believe it's going to be very, very soon, we're going to see a massive change in the price of gold. And that's going to happen because basically I think the pricing mechanism that we've been used to here in the U.S. or the world, was maybe based out of obviously London and the comics. They've been using a pricing mechanism, pricing fix. That fix is based on what's called price manipulation. Well, if you take price manipulation out of the equation, how are you going to have a price fix? What you're going to get is true price discovery. And if you discover the price of gold and silver and the markets take a massive hit, anybody and everybody is going to want it, and they will put whatever price they can to get their hands on it, but there won't be any because no one's going to want to sell it. So it's just going to keep going up and up. So you're going to get price, you're going to have gold move $100, $200 per day. And the people will be putting orders in, but they may not be getting them, or because they be stores that have them either are not selling, or they don't want to sell, or it's sold out. But true price discovery is how China, I think, is going to play into all of this. With the new fix, that the Shanghai fix, and when they basically when they hit the switch, you're going to see everything just change quickly. And so that switch, but I'm just using a term as a switch, but I don't think it's that way. But basically, when the mechanism gets hit, the mechanism of price suppression that's being used for, to basically put a fix on the price gets removed, and then gold will have to explode in price with silver to make incredible moves just to find a point of neutrality, because when you have, and then those people who believe they own gold and it's been sold 500 times over, they're going to come looking for it, and so that's how the price just goes astronomical. So to think gold, because it's priced today at $1,200 and say $50, to think it's not going to go to $10,000 is silly, because I think $10,000 on gold is an absolute minimum that it would reach. Now, the problem is it could go a lot higher than that, but those are hard things to figure out in terms of what kind of magnitude it can go, because there's been so much money printed in the world that if true price discovery does take effect, people say outlandish numbers like, 50,000, and not that they're as outlandish, they're just big. And could it get there? Well, based on the amount of money printing, yeah, but I don't know. Those are hard things to forecast in terms of what I do, because those cycles give me the direction and then how long something would go up or how long it would go down. So it will be interesting to see even this year what kind of grand prices could be achieved, because I do believe the mechanism that's been used for pricing is going to be taken away, or going to be intentionally taken away, and then you're going to see true price discovery take form, and you see incredible moves on gold and silver. And I think silver is going to be just an absolute, the biggest winner of all of them possibly, just because silver in ground ratio, if you listen to some of the very educated, and not only educated, but people who are who own the mines and doing really, really impressive interviews, they basically say for every ounce of gold we mine, we get 9 ounces of silver. Okay. But then how come the ratio is like 75 to 1 or 78 to 1 right now? You see what I'm saying? So basically, if the ratio would hit neutrality again of, say, 9 to 1, what it is, in the earth, silver would have to rise 3, 4, 5, 6 fold relative to gold.
We think of gold, and gold's a wonderful thing, but I've been saying for a long time that the upside to silver is absolutely huge. I mean, it is absolutely huge. And I do believe that we will see drastic changes in the price of silver when things begin to crumble. Which brings me to the crux of our conversation, audience. I wanted to make sure that you had a good grasp of where Bo was coming from and his understanding and knowledge of the precious metals markets, because one of the things that caught my attention about him when I was researching his stuff is his understanding about where we are in time as far as the world's economies go. And Bo, you've made some pretty astonishing predictions for the next few months, scary predictions, if you will. I know that Jim Willie has said that he thinks that we won't get beyond mid-July, which is next month, without seeing a crash. And you're not far behind him in this regard. You think that things are very serious right now and that the population at large is pretty much asleep at the wheel, don't you?
Right. If you again, I'll make reference to my video again that I posted on the 4th of June. It's titled 0 Hour June 2016. So kind of gives you an idea of where I'm at. But I guess our time cycles, or what he's hearing, or what I'm doing in my cycle work, it shows the same thing. I think everything's about to change here and now, and I think the markets are going to get hit hard. Gold's going to explode, and I think, like I said in the video, I believe June is a pivotal time point for our world, where you made the correct decisions in life. Basically you're going to be stuck living with your decisions. And like I said, it's actually in the video I even make reference to, decisions define our lives, and our decisions, build our foundation. And I close the video basically saying, what's your foundation made of? Because there's, what was in the Bible, it's, one of the quotes, but it's basically direct reference to Jesus. Basically within the Bible it says, anyone who builds their foundation may use a variety of materials: gold, silver, jewels, wood, hay, or straw. Okay? But in the next line it says, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. So basically, will your years of work and building survive a fire? So does everything you own, will it survive a fire? People need to ask themselves that question, because gold and silver do not burn.
Good point. And audience, Bo's an expert in his field. And as a consequence, if he's pointing to June or July, then we need to sit up and take notice. Bo, what do you really think is about to happen just this month? What's your gut telling you? What are we going to see, not only in the gold and silver markets, but in the world in general?
Let me give an example. Everybody boards the Titanic. They're on the Titanic. The Titanic hit an iceberg. It's taking on water. The band's playing. The drinks are being served. Everything's fine. That's where we're at.
Have we already hit the iceberg?
Oh yeah. The iceberg's been hit. The boat's been half full of water. The band's playing. Everyone's drinking, everything's going to be just fine. It's all going to be just fine.
And so they're moving deck chairs back and forth. The orchestra's playing there.
Absolutely.
That is a great analogy, because I think that's exactly where we're at.
But the point is that and then all of a sudden the lights go out.
Yeah. Well, and then it's too late. I mean, if you're below decks and the lights go out and the flooding comes in, then you're lost.
It's a great analogy, but it's scary as all heck. And so if you're not positioned, I'm trying to give a visual, but the moment the band stops playing, it's all over.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we have been talking for years now on Hebrew Nation about those things that are coming upon the earth. Because, okay, audience, we're talking about gold and silver. We're talking about the markets in general. We're talking about the economy. And one of the things that we have to understand, Bo, is that what happens when world's economies or countries' economies go south, isn't it true that war often breaks out? You could see this cycle, World War I, World War II. Do you think that that's right around the corner as well?
It's actually funny that you asked that question. I don't mean funny, but again, I make a reference to my video game because this is strange. I made these videos, I did all this, and now you haven't even seen this, the video that I made. All your questions are right in there. And I actually answer that question again. So it's funny how, the Lord.
The same Holy Spirit that lives inside of you lives inside of me, so it's not surprising to me at all.
Your question is uncanny. I basically, in the video, describe a timeline, how after the birth of Jesus, the world, basically the world reset their clocks to zero. My mathematical calculations ultimately discover a calculation of 252 years. You multiply it by 6, you get the year 1512. You get England granting itself legal immunity. And then you got another 252 years later. You get the currency cycle, which started in 1764. People who got legal immunity create currency, and when that happens, they enforce the currency on the U.S. colonies. And guess what happens? Poverty, hunger, joblessness, and the colonies ultimately fueling the anger for the American Revolution or war. Okay, well, that was the 7th cycle. So add another 252 years, and you arrive at this year, 2016. So basically, don't be surprised if we're going to see poverty, hunger, joblessness, and ultimately fueling a war situation, in our world. It's basically a cycle that's been foretold, going back hundreds, thousands of years. The problem is with the cycle that's 252 years old. What does the Bible say about a generation? How many years is a generation?
70.
So 70 years. So you got 252 divided by 70, and you got 3.6. So basically, you got 3.5 generations of people forget about what just happened 252 years ago. And so these are just long-term cycles that that restart themselves. But basically, you got a lot of changes that are supposed to hit the world this year.
That's interesting because you said that 7 cycles brought the American Revolution. We are entering the 8th cycle, and the number 8 is a new beginning. And you were referencing earlier the year of Jubilee, which is also about new beginnings. So I think that there is hope in that if you're one of Yahweh's people, then there's hope for you, that this new beginning may well see Messiah.
I will agree with you. The new beginning will see Messiah, but not yet. Okay, that's not coming just yet. First, you have to see grand changes. You're going to have to see economic collapse. You're going to see calamities. You're going to see a lot of things first come before Messiah returns.
Absolutely.
So there's timing. There is all timing for that foretold within the gold cycle, but not yet. So, but this cycle, first you're going to have a lot of grand changes occur. So yes, I do agree with you, but not just yet.
It's very astute that you say that, Bo, because I believe, as the audience knows, in the harpazo, but the harpazo happens after tribulation. And with Hebrew Nation talk about the second Exodus. The Bible talks about a second Exodus that will dwarf the first, that they won't even talk about the first Exodus any longer. And then we talk about a time in the wilderness and Messiah coming for his bride and what that means. So before we all go to be where he wants us to be, there's a lot of road between here and there.
Yeah, the road hasn't started yet. Well, it has, but meaning like the main portion of Daniel's timeline has not begun yet. That's the thing people don't understand. So it's a lot of changes yet still to come. But basically, the key thing with the Bible, what does it say? Prepare. So what is prepare? Make sure you have access to food and water. You've prepared. You can't just rely on things the way they are, because when change happens, the change will be big. So you need to be prepared. And then if you have silver, right, you will be able to transact. I love when people say, but you'll be throwing your silver in the streets and gold in the streets. It's all about money. No, it's God's money. And it's a way for you to buy time to get out of the way. A freight train's coming. Are you going to stand on the tracks? If you don't own gold and silver, you will have no options. How are you going to eat if you can't buy food? I'm taking it to the worst case scenario, but if you don't have any means, then basically you didn't prepare.
With that said, in the last minutes left in the program, what is it that people should be doing, assuming that the orchestra is still playing on the deck? What is it that people can be doing right now?
Well, as always, the first place is always start is look to within. You need to pray. You need to know who your master is. You need to know. I'm not going to tell people to. People need to understand that the world is not random. It's run by God. Okay, Jesus came onto this earth, and period. That's and he was born and he died on the cross and he was resurrected. So you need to know that. if that's what you want to believe, but you need to believe that did happen. All the clocks started at zero. Everything was reset. It happened, and so once you start to accept that as reality, look to within, decide what you want to do for you and your family. But to do nothing is wrong. It says prepare. So what is prepare? Make sure you have food. Make sure you have means. What means? If you have silver, you'll be able to transact. You'll be able to buy things or sell things, whatever you want to do. But you need to believe that everything's going to never change. That's the problem. Everybody believes nothing's ever going to change, and so everything's going to be just fine. But what if it isn't just fine? And as an example earlier, as I just go back to the precious metals, and the reason it's so important is because it gives you means. It's like if something happens, if you do own silver, you have the ability to transact. So how wonderful is that? Why would you not want the option to be able to transact? Say, I'm just going to leave all my, my monies in paper. But think about this. We said it earlier. Let's say gold, goes to $10,000, right, Daniel? So this is such a simple example. But if your net worth is $100,000, and as an example, if you took 10% of your net worth and you bought that in gold, right? So now you have 10% in gold, and the rest is, in paper assets and everything else. You don't want to touch it. Let's say you leave it the way it was. Let's say everything did go to heck. You've prepared. You've got food. You've got water, right? And you now have 10% of your net worth in gold. Silver will do better for you than gold, but even let's just say gold. And then gold goes to 10,000. That's a multiple of roughly 10. So 10% of your net worth, gold price went 10 times up. So when all the calamities are hit and you need to be able to transact, guess what your net worth is? It's still $100,000 because gold went up to 10,000. You see what I'm saying? So you basically preserved your wealth, and you have the ability to still transact, and so it's just a matter of having choice. I think it's an important thing about preparing, and having choices in life. You have no food, you have no water, you have no silver or gold, you have no choices.
Well, speaking of choices, what kind of things do you do on your website? What kind of services do you offer? And if listeners want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Again, probably if you're looking to get the YouTube channel, just some informative and most recent videos. The best place to go after that would be my webpage is Gold 2020 Forecast, Gold 2020 Forecast. And at the very bottom there, we offer what's called a gold index, and we've got two specific cycle high time points for gold. So we expect gold to have two very powerful moves this year, 2016. And those time points, those cycle highs, we include within our gold index. The stock index outlines the time points we expect where the markets are supposed to get hit or crash. And then for people who are more, so those are the two main things that people would need. If they're more of on the trading side, then they can look at what's called our exclusive turn dates for gold and silver, and that's just it's a whole different service, but basically very detailed analysis and gives you specific days or time points if you're really looking to trade. But generally speaking, if you're not a trader, you wouldn't need that. Then ultimately, it's just the gold or the stock index, especially the most important one is obviously the gold index. If because I think gold is going to be a pretty incredible move here this year, and very exciting times for the precious metals. So.
One of the things I want to tell you, audience, about this, man, when I was in the financial industry, people would look at the fundamentals or they'd look at charts. And I was always a chart guy. And what I would tell people is that the charts don't lie. These things are cycles, and you can see them. On the paper, there's a physical, or on the computer, there's a physical representation of what the markets did. And one of the things that I appreciated about Bo when I was first looking him up is the fact that you are a heavy chart user. Your ability to analyze the cycles and to see is uncanny to me. Audience, this is one of the reasons why I thought it was important for you to hear what this man has to say, because he is right more times than he is wrong. I've heard a lot of guys over the years talking about gold and silver, but Bo, my hat's off to you, buddy. You do a great job in the things that you do, and I so much appreciate you being on and sharing some of that with us. So with the last couple minutes, what would you like to share with the audience in closing?
The key things is insurance. Have you done anything to protect yourself and your family? That's ultimately the most important thing to understand about where we're at in life. Have you done anything? Or what have you done? The cycles don't lie. Like you said, I love what you just described about the charts. I am heavy in charts. Why? Because charts are nothing more than people. See, God writes a cycle, okay? And then people create it. See, so a cycle is already written forward. The problem is that it hasn't happened yet. But the cycle tells me how many, so I run Daniel's timeline. I know how many days forward Daniel's timeline tops out this year, okay? So I know where the cycle high comes in because it's already calculated. The problem is it hasn't happened. Why hasn't it happened? Because the days haven't happened, and each day people do things. So the charts are nothing more than a representation of people. But the cycle tells the direction before it actually happens. So I can take a long-term chart like I did on the video, and I did a long 16-year chart on gold. Well, what I know is from that 16-year chart, the direction it ends up in is going up. So that's why I illustrate the direction that, we're going to see a big move in gold this year, because Daniel's timeline, it tells me that which way, that we're going to have an up cycle. And all I know is then I can layer in the charts, and from your perspective, when you look at them, you'll see that they make sense. You can't look at the chart and say it's wrong, because when you look at mathematically, I'll give you the example of what's about to happen. And like on the world markets, for example, you've got triple tops everywhere. You got we call the exact top on the U.S. NASDAQ on July 20th. Of 2015. We did a schedule 2 weeks in advance, an interview on that day saying the top is in today. Well, guess what? The NASDAQ has never been higher than it was on July 20th of 2015. Okay? And since then, it's gone down, up, down. All it's done is create another triple top on the weeklies. So since last July 2015, that was the first top. Then the second top came in, like I think it was December. November, December, and then we have another top right now, okay? So since you understand what tops are, right, Daniel, what happens on a triple top that fails? So in other words, you have three tops, it goes up and it drops. It goes up and it drops. As two goes up again and it doesn't go higher, and then it fails, so then so it's going to drop again, right? But what's significant about a third drop?
It'll go through the floor.
They're usually much worse. Right, exactly. So that's where we're at right now. So I'm expecting, a lot of problems on the markets soon. This month, starting soon. I believe it all should be, looking at what I'm seeing, potentially we should see the markets start to fall hard.
Well, if you look at the chart for the Dow and you compare it to 1929, it is the same. I mean, it's scary the same. It's like it's cloned. So I'd agree with you as well.
What I can tell you about 1929 is, see, that cycle, that's 87 years ago. But the problem with 1929, that's within a grand cycle of 252 years. So that's crash that occurred there won't even be as bad as one that's coming.
I wholeheartedly agree, buddy. I fully expect, this is just me. I'm not in the business anymore, but I think we're going to see 5,000. I really do. But I think it's going to be that ugly. POLNY, thank you so much for being on Prepare the Way today.
Daniel, I really appreciate speaking with you, and it was a nice chat we had, and really, this was a great interview, so thank you for your time.
Thank you, my friend. Be sure to check out his stuff at gold2020forecast.com. He's got lots on there, videos, charts. Take a look and make sure you put that stuff to good use, because time is short. Speaking of short time, that'll do it for us this week on Prepare the Way. I'm Daniel Holdings. We'll see you again next week. Until then, shalom.